Well, the costly gospel, when you say something like that, the very notion of there being a cost and the gospel can make some of us a little uncomfortable. It's like, well, what are you saying there? A costly gospel. This is not a cost that you pay to gain the benefits of what Christ has purchased for us. This is the cost that you pay in following Jesus. You see, the gospel, the benefits of heaven, are not something that we can earn. They are not something that we can do with just enough good deeds and acts of righteousness to somehow gain access to. It is only the work of Jesus that can take us into the throne room of grace. It's only the work of Jesus that can cover us in that righteousness and take us into his holy presence and can truly rescue us. However, when we are rescued, what we are turning our lives over to, the almighty consuming power of Jesus Christ, that gospel life, to truly live it, to truly know it, to truly demonstrate it to this world around us, will cost us everything. And I say that with a big smile. Sort of seems like a toothy grin. But with a big smile on my face. I love the fact that it is a costly gospel. I know that sounds strange, because this message, if we were to try and pitch the gospel of Jesus Christ, and we were to say, okay, our goal is to see people hear it and respond to it and say, yes, I want it. Well, our natural tendency is to not give them what I'm going to share with you today. No, Eric, please. I have someone visiting with me today. We don't want to tell them this. That's going to scare them off. This is the truth of heaven. And when you hear it without wax, without dilution, and you give it straight, it actually is the most amazing thing for the soul when it beholds it. Because it's seeing something that, for all practical purposes, should be repulsive. What do you mean? I need to come and die? I need to give up my life? It asks for everything. However, what is gained in turn is everything that is God. Everything that our soul could possibly long for is met in Jesus Christ. There's no downside to this. However, it costs you everything. Okay, the costly gospel. Do we have the keynote for this? Oh, we're working on it. What? It just never got transferred over to the It's not on my computer. Oh, it's on Sandy's. Okay. Acts 23:11. And the night following, the Lord stood by him and said, "Be of good cheer, Paul, for thou hast testified of me in Jerusalem. So must thou bear witness also at Rome." Paul was called of Jesus Christ. We know that. A lot of us like to term Paul a special Christian. Remember I was talking about Frisianism, and I was talking about the danger that has upon Christianity today? Gary Friesian calls Paul, Peter, special Christians. In other words, the way they lived is not the way that God intends us to live. Well, I would like to ask Gary back, what is our template then? Where is our example? If Peter and Paul are not examples for us, who is? What exactly can we look at? Because this is the template of what God does in a man. And so we try and explain away Jesus and say, well, he was God, so therefore we can't follow him, even though it literally says, as the Father has sent me, so I send you. Well, but he's God, so we can't follow his footsteps. Oh, well, then Peter and Paul, they're like superheroes. You can't expect to walk in that direction. And so it's like we throw the whole thing out. You end up with nothing left. Oh, no, there is one thing that we do hold on to, Romans chapter 7, the second half. We could throw out the rest, but we'll hold on to that because that best enunciates my life. Defeat. We say no. This is a model, this is a pattern. Paul is called to Jerusalem to testify. You want to know that's the stupidest place to go on planet Earth. This is the place they crucified Jesus. Okay? If you want to live a long life, don't go to Jerusalem. You know that Jesus, it says, set his face towards Jerusalem knowing he was going to die. And he still went. Why would you do that? Why would you continue forward knowing that you're going to die? Because this isn't about you and your skin and your comfort. This is about the glory of God. And Jesus was on a mission. And when the Father told him it was time and all the indicators were there, he knew it was his time to go to Jerusalem. And he knew he would die. And that's when he starts talking about it. I will be turned over, I will be beaten, abused, I will die, but I will rise again. There was a commission that he had. Paul is modeling the same thing here. Paul has stood before and testified, before all of Jerusalem, he's testified of the realities of Jesus Christ. And guess what? There are men in Jerusalem that right when he was leaving are literally pledging themselves on an oath that they will never eat again until Paul is killed. First of all, guess what? If he hadn't gone to Jerusalem, everything would have been fine. Just stay out of Jerusalem, Paul, and everything's fine. But here's the key issue that I'm going to be bringing up in this message. Let's read this. Oh, we have it here. And the night following, the Lord stood by him and said, "Be of good cheer, Paul." I mean, the guy's hunted right now. And God says, "Be of good cheer. For as thou hast testified of me in Jerusalem, so must thou bear witness also at Rome." Well, there's no crazier place to be going than Rome. Okay, but Paul is actually a prisoner at this time and for standing up for the gospel. So he's actually in chains. But God says to him, "Be of good cheer." He has men that are trying to hunt him. He still is in chains, but they want him dead. So I don't know if you remember the story of him being this group that's after him, and he's like snuck out of the environment and hidden. He's literally protected by the Roman government as a prisoner, but these men are hunting him, and he needs to get to Rome. So let's build the case a little further. In Acts 26, and then when they were gone aside, they talked between themselves. This is Agrippa and Festus, saying, "This man doeth nothing worthy of death or bonds." Then said Agrippa unto Festus, "This man might have been set at liberty if he had not appealed unto Caesar." Okay, so he is being taken before the Roman legal system, and he's being evaluated because he is being accused of all sorts of heinous things. And when the Romans look at him, basically in this process, he is appealed to Caesar. Because he's a Roman citizen, he's able to do it. See, Paul knows where he's called. He's called to Rome. And so in this process, Agrippa, King Agrippa, and Festus, these are two very powerful men in all of Rome. And they say, "You know what? This man might have been set at liberty if he had not appealed unto Caesar." Where's Caesar? In Rome. Paul has an agenda, and it's God's agenda for his life. Now I want you to realize, you could be set at liberty, but God has a commission for you, and it's to stand and bear witness of him in Rome. And so therefore, the stupidity of a Christian, the seeming stupidity of a Christian, is that they could have been set free. They could have lived their life the way that they could have or wanted to have lived it. Instead, they are bound and constrained by a calling that they've received. Be of good cheer, you Ellerslie student, because just as you have borne witness of me here in Windsor, Colorado, you will bear witness of me in Rome. And you are bound, you are called, you are committed unto something higher. Paul wasn't seeking his own comfort on planet Earth. He was after the glory of Jesus Christ. And for that glory to be made manifest, God made it clear that he needed to bear witness of him in Rome. Okay, now this is just all the baseline. I don't know what Dan said in the devotional this morning. So if anything overlaps, it's God. It's not because we sat down and talked about it. The winds of the fair havens. In Acts 27, you'll notice Acts 23, Acts 26, Acts 27. We're following a storyline here. And hardly passing it, came unto a place which is called the Fair Havens. Now, because of the devotional this morning, you probably know what's happening. But Paul is a prisoner, and out of all these journeys, where it seemed like he may die in prison from before he could have ever reached Rome, God gets his men to the end. The work he begins, he brings it to completion. However, in Paul's journeys, how in the world is this guy going to survive? This is miserable. actually, because he was in bonds and in chains, that's the reason his life was even spared. At a certain point when the Jews were hunting him, he was literally spared. The Roman government helped him escape. And so the fact that he's in chains doesn't look too appealing to many of us. But he's in chains because those chains are bringing him somewhere. Do you know where? Before Caesar, in Rome. And so he's still in chains, and he's on a boat. And this boat has to pass through a place called the Fair Havens. Now, I am going to lay out for you what we could say is a metaphor or a picture of the Christian life, the Christian soul. And it's this boat. This boat is us. And Paul, in this picture, I'm going to say, is like a symbol of Jesus Christ in the hull. Okay, we have invited Jesus Christ into our life. And Jesus Christ is pressing forward toward an agenda. I've called you to Rome. This boat must reach Rome. This substance within us is called to bear witness in Rome. And hardly passing it, came unto a place which is called the Fair Haven. Sounds like a nice place, doesn't it? Nigh whereunto was the city of Lycia, and Paul said unto them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the lading and ship, but also of our lives. So I'm going to give you the same message today. Here we are, Ellerslie students. I know there's a hankering in your life for comfort. There is a hankering in your life to return to normalcy. It's a lot of work, this spiritual life, this fully given existence unto Jesus Christ. However, I perceive that this voyage that you are on and that I am on with you will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the lading and ship, but also of our lives. Like I said, this is the worst possible message you could ever give to someone when you're trying to woo them to Christianity. And I say, no, this is the greatest possible message, because when someone makes a choice for Jesus, staring straight in the face the costly gospel, you know they mean it. As opposed to this fluffy nonsense that we have around us today, where people want only the benefits out of God, but they don't want the cost that comes with knowing Him. Because I perceive, and I think you do too, that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the lading and ship, but also of our lives. And you ask me, what's my response? Do I want to continue? I already made that choice a long time ago. I know it will come with much hurt and much damage. I know it. It already has. And guess what? I'm the happier for it. I know God has a commission on my life. And that's why when I talk to you about the commission on your life, I know what God is doing in you. Your end goal might not be talking before Caesar in Rome, but whatever your Rome and your Caesar are, it's very real and tangible, and God is preparing you for it. And there is nothing in between that can possibly quell your life. You are unstoppable. You are impenetrable and untouchable until you reach your destination. God has you here on earth for a reason, and nothing will stop you, even though it will seem like all hell is set to destroy you. You will get to Rome. You will stand before Caesar, and you will bear witness of the living God. The stripping of the Spirit. What we're going to talk about in this message, and you can see if you've taken a peek, because I know some of you and how you work with these notes, you take peeks at them. You'll see that there's numbers here. There are certain things that happen in this journey that we're not necessarily expecting when we first come to Christianity, because no one told us about them. And so when they happen, they're oftentimes shocking to us. Because, to be honest, we're expecting everything to be smiles and kisses and hugs. I mean, why wouldn't it be? Now, we know that life isn't that way, but we still are expecting something a little different in Christianity. We don't realize that as Christians, what we're doing is we're defecting from the dark power of this earth into the power of light. And now we're arch enemy number one. We literally are hostile to this world system. That's the beginnings of Christianity. It's not the removal into heaven. It is heaven planted within us in hostile territory. So we have all of heaven, don't get me wrong. We have joy, we have peace, and that peace is beyond description. It passes all understanding. That joy is exceeding great joy. But we have this in an earthen vessel in the midst of hostile territory. So there's this process that the Spirit of God works us through, and we must go through it. Okay, I'm going to say this again. To get to Rome, we must go through the stripping of the Spirit. We must pass through the fair havens. There's no other way. From where we are to where we need to be, we have to go through this. And I want you, instead of trying to run and hide in a corner today as I'm sharing this, and plug your ears and say, no, I don't want to hear this. I don't want this to be my reality. I want you to embrace it and cherish it, because this work brings about gold in your life. The stripping of the Spirit. First of all, we have something called the non-essentials. You see, there's a great storm that begins to hit our life the moment we begin to set out towards Rome. We have Paul in the hole. The Spirit of Christ is with us. You know, the enemy isn't too happy about Paul progressing. I think the enemy's figured out by now that Paul is going to stand before Caesar. And so guess what? Where is Paul? He's in the hull of that ship. Well, if Paul is in the hull of that ship, all hell is going to stand against that ship progressing. You follow me? Who's inside of you? Maybe not Paul, but the Spirit that was in Paul, Jesus Christ. And the enemy is starting to see the trajectory of your life. And so out comes the storm. But when there's a storm that is hitting our life, I want you to realize the Spirit of God is equally active. And he takes advantage to everything that storm is doing, and he turns it to good in your spiritual life and development. Consider it a pure joy. Consider it pure joy, my brethren, when you face trials of many kind. Why? Why would we consider it joy? Because those trials are doing something to work strength within you. They form hupomone within you, which is a tensile of soul, a steel of soul that enables you to walk through this life unbending, unmoved. So let's read what goes with the non-essentials. Because on a boat, you have different things on a boat. Things that are important, things that are essential, things that are not essential. Okay? The first thing God begins to touch is what we could call the non-essentials. But not long after, there arose against it, speaking of the ship, a tempestuous wind called Euroclydon. Isn't that interesting? The wind actually has a name. So you could always refer to this. Yeah, Euroclydon is hitting me right now. Euroclydon is after the non-essentials. The first thing that you begin to hit is Euroclydon in your spiritual life and development. You are headed somewhere, and God's going to get you there. Don't worry. The work that he begins, he's faithful to complete. However, in the midst of it, it doesn't seem like you're going very much farther than where you are right now, and it looks like all is lost. Sound familiar? But not long after, there arose against it a tempestuous wind called Euroclydon. And we, being exceedingly tossed with a tempest, the next day they lightened the ship. God is bringing you through a process where you are in a time of storm, you're in a time of difficulty, and God says, you see these things in your life? To you, they're not non-essentials. To you, they're very essential. But as you move forward, you'll begin to realize they're non-essentials. For instance, in the captain's quarters, there's this nice picture on the wall. You've always liked that picture. And God says, we need to lighten the ship. What? That picture. You're like, what? I can't give up my picture. That's what I stare at every night. You know, I'm sitting there with my pipe. The pipe too. What? I can't go without my pipe and without my picture. Now, as you're moving forward, you're going to realize the pipe and the picture really aren't that difficult to give up compared to what he's going to take. But at the time, the non-essentials, they really aren't important. Okay, for a ship to get from here to there, you don't need a pipe and you don't need a picture. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, your career as a captain of a ship doesn't make money off of his pipe and off of that picture on the wall. What does he make money off of? What's in the hull of the ship? His cargo. Okay, so when God starts getting a little closer to the cargo, then you start feeling a little more pain. But right now, we weren't expecting to give up the pipe and the picture. This is a little beyond what we signed up for because we didn't know what we were signing up for. The gospel has a purpose in our life, and it's to bring about a clear picture of Jesus Christ on earth. He'll take care of us, don't worry. You'll survive, because when he takes that pipe and that picture, you know that he replaces it with something far better? But you just don't see it right away, because he's doing something beyond what we can see. But we need to lighten the ship. For us in here, there are things in this semester that God has put his finger on. We call them the non-essentials. They don't seem like that big of a deal afterwards, okay? But when you're going through it, I tell you what, I mean, some of the things God asked me for, I mean, they seem so ridiculous now to look back on. For instance, my music. I love songs. Journey. I will run. Yeah, see, so you're like, oh, you should have kept this career, Eric. I used to love music, but a certain kind of music. And God's like putting his finger on it. It was my pipe. It was my picture. And I'm like, what am I going to do without that? Sports. I loved the Denver Broncos, and I found a whole solace every week in being able to turn and watch that game. In fact, when it wasn't football season, I mean, it's just like, no offense, baseball, but you're not as exciting as football. Okay, I had March Madness. I had these different things that would try and keep the rush up in my soul, but it was a pipe and it was a picture. And God was saying, we need to start lightening the ship here, Eric, because there's a lot of weight, and we need to move. We need to get somewhere. There are weights that are besetting us. And right in the beginning of Hebrews 12, it says we need to lighten the ship. Throw off the weights that are easily besetting you. They're hindering you. I mean, you got this big bowling ball that is, tied to your waist. In fact, some of us have 20 bowling balls. We're like, I'm just not moving very quick. Lighten the ship. Cut off the non-essentials. You know what those are. For me, I mean, they're ridiculous little things. I mean, you look back and you're just sort of chuckling at yourself. Actually, you're embarrassed about them. I told you guys what I brought to missionary school, didn't I? Did I tell you guys that? Okay. I'm headed to missionary school. This is right in the time I'm going through the winds of the Fair Havens. Okay, I'm literally leaving my potential career behind as a doctor. I have it all set for me. Everything is open highway for success in my life, and God asked me to give it all up. Okay, that's a little further down than the non-essentials. But this is what's happening to me. And so I still want to take some of these things with me. Some of the things that have given me smiles throughout the years. I mean, I didn't know even how to laugh and how to have fun without sports. I used to scream at the top of my lungs, blow out my voice, in front of the television. This is fun. What do you do if you don't have it? And so I went to missionary school. Missionary school, very spiritual place to go, don't you think? With my football, my basketball, I think I had a Frisbee in there, my weight set. Did I tell you guys that? I brought my weight set to missionary school. I know some of you are looking at me going, you lift weights? I used to weigh about 25 pounds more than I weigh now. I went, another thing that got stripped. I went to missionary school, and I remember coming up to the leader, I'm like, where do I set up my weight set? Yeah, other guys can use it. I'm not just gonna say I'm the only one that can use it. Where do you want me to set it up? He's looking at me like, what in the world are you doing? You bring a weight set to missionary school? And so he says, out back. There's like all these, weeds that are like up to the chest. I'm like, out here? Yeah, if you want to set it up, you can set it up out here. I'm like, what? This guy's totally insensitive. People need to lift weights, okay? This is embarrassing, okay? We have things that need to be lightened in our life. Things that are weighing us down, but we can't see them. God continues to progress as we're headed through the winds of the Fair Havens. It's not just the non-essentials, but there's something that we're going to term the replaceables. These are things that are very necessary for the working of a ship, but when you get to the other end, you can still go out and buy it again. Okay, so as you're giving it up, you reason with yourself. This is similar to fasting, okay? When you're giving up food, fasting is based on a principle of replaceables, okay? So you give it up, and it's hard. It's very difficult to give up food for even one meal. But what's in the back of your mind? Well, at least I get to get the food back. And so God is teaching us at different levels how to let go. Okay, the non-essentials, that picture can easily be replaced, yes, but it's also non-important. But you're tackling on the ship? This is important for a ship. And so when you start giving these things up, it starts cutting at a deeper level. It's like, oh God, I don't know how I'd survive without that. You have me is how you'll survive. You see, you're always used to using that tackling. And so in your mind, you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna give this up, but God, you're gonna have to really come through, because without that, I don't even know how to make this ship function. I need my tackling. So he's asking for the replaceables. He moves a step deeper. And the third day, we cast out with our own hands the tackling of the ship. And so they're progressing through this story, and you see as they're going through the winds of the Fair Havens, this storm is unrelenting. And the non-essentials get stripped, the picture in the captain's quarter, the pipe, these things that are weighing down the ship, they get lightened over the side. And then God says, also this, little heavier things, that we need to lighten it even more, because otherwise we're going down. It's either that or we die. We need to lighten this ship. And when neither sun nor stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope that we should be saved was then taken away. But after long abstinence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them and said, Sirs, ye should have hearkened unto me and not have loosed from Crete, and to have gained this harm and loss. And now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. For there stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am, and whom I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar. Paul needs to get somewhere. And because he needs to get somewhere, literally everyone on the ship will be saved. But God promises that there will not be a loss of any man's life among them, but doesn't promise that the ship won't be lost. You'll notice that? God knows that the ship needs to be stripped away. The husk of us needs to be removed for God to forward this message, this journey into Rome. And lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer, for I believe God that it shall be even as it was told me. Everyone on the ship is forsaking the fact that there's any hope. They're despairing. There is no way out of this. We're dying. Paul stands up in the midst of all that darkness, in the midst of a totally forlorn crew, and he says, my God has spoken. I need to get to Rome. You will not die. This is what happens inside of us. Christ rises up and says, be of good cheer. We're like, my life is ruined. There's no hope here. He says, I have a purpose for you. I know all you see is storm right now. I know all you see is the fact that you lost that picture, you lost that pipe, you lost the tackling. And now it seems like you're going to lose your life. But through this storm, I'm removing everything that is hindering you from truly representing me to this world. You will lose the ship, but you will live. 3, the lifeboat. When I arrived at missionary school with my basketball, football, frisbee, and weight set, which by the way is very heavy to carry in the back of our vehicle down. I used to, by the way, roll up my sleeves. I used to love to find an excuse to take off my shirt, and because I didn't want to get a tan line. And at the missionary school, you weren't supposed to walk around and strut, which made no sense to me. It's like, come on, if I'm not going to get a tan line because you guys don't like people with their shirts off. I'm not a girl. I can walk around with my shirt off. Isn't this a nice attitude for a new missionary? Aren't you guys very impressed? God gets a hold of my life and I still have issues. I still had weight. I still had junk. God was purging this. God has to bring it to the surface. You don't realize what's in the hull of your ship. You don't realize that God is going to get everything out of that ship that needs to progress, but in the process, he's going to get rid of the whole ship. Let's get rid of the ship, take you out, and make you useful. He needs to get Paul through. He has an emissary. He has something. It's a prize to him. This is what he purchased on the cross. The rest of it is husk. It is chaff. Let's get rid of it so that the true purpose, what God purchased, can be brought through and gained for his glory. So I show up at missionary school, and I'm a little uncomfortable, okay, because there's a lot of strange people at missionary school. You guys have it fairly good here, because we could call this a missionary school. There's some fairly normal people here. When I was at missionary school, Let's see, this guy over here just had gotten out of an insane asylum. This guy over here was a drug dealer in some like Crips gang. And we had another guy here who had hair down to like the back of his kneecap, and he was like this rebellious son. His father was one of the leading pastors in the nation, and he was just like, opposite everywhere. I have no idea what he was even doing there. It's like, what are you doing here? It's like he'd always been living in rebellion, and now he's like come back. But he's just had all these bizarre stories. He was very proud about them too, so he's always telling you all these stories of sin. And so I come in, and I'm the clean-cut guy. I just always sort of looked like this, and I come in, and, my life has always been somewhat together. I got my weight set out there, I got my basketball, and no one knew how to play basketball. It's like, who are you guys? Everyone plays basketball. I was just like, who are these people? And so I was a little uncomfortable. I wasn't in my element, and God had me exactly where I needed to be. He needed to show me that I wasn't the center of the universe. This wasn't about me. He was stripping me, and that's exactly what needed to happen to me so that I could be made useful, because at that point in time, I was anything but useful. Why God even put up with me is the shocker. But he saw something in the hull of that ship that was important. He just had to get rid of the ship. And so when he's dealing with non-essentials, I thought he was going so far beyond his bounds. So I looked around me at all the other Christians like, you're not asking any of them for their picture and their pipe. You can't ask me for that. Well, he did, and he did it with unrelenting fervor. And then when he starts asking for the tackling, and he starts asking me to leave my world behind and follow him, I still wanted to take a little of my world with me. I didn't know I was doing that. You're not always cognizant of how much you're dragging with you. You're not always cognizant of the big weight that you're dragging behind you down the street. But every once in a while you wake up and you see the weight sitting there, and he says, do you want me to remove it? It's fairly simple. All you have to do is say yes. I really like that weight. Why do we like the weight? I'm not sure, but we're used to life with it. Would you rather have freedom from the weight, or would you like to drag that crazy thing around for the rest of your life because it's familiar? Jesus Christ, take away the weight, please. The life bone. My uncle, before I'd gone down, I was a good student in college, and I was doing really well, and I was moving towards the doctor thing. And my uncle, who still is a very wealthy man, he had the life that I always dreamed of. He had a yacht. He had season tickets to the Seahawks, the Mariners, the Washington Huskies. He had houses on the peninsulas overlooking the ocean, multiple ones, ones with tennis courts and pools. And okay, you all with me? This is the life we want, isn't it? Cars, nice cars. And he says to me, he says, Eric, I know that you're headed to be a doctor, but if you ever decide to go a different route, I'd just like to make the proposal that you come into business with me. Ching, ching. Go, if the doctor thing doesn't work out, I could do this. Well, then what does God start doing in my life? Starts messing with it. Starts taking me through the fair havens. Eric, are you willing to let this go? The pipe, the picture, the tackling? God, why are you asking for these things? Then he says, will you follow me down to Texas? You're going to look like a fool, but are you willing to do it? I did. I looked like a fool. I was leaving college with respectable people and going amongst weird-looking people. And I had something in the back of my mind. This is what it was. I didn't say it out loud, and I didn't even realize it was there, but it was this. If this thing doesn't work out, I know where I'm going. My uncle will probably still take me. I know I could still have a life if this doesn't work, but I'll put my toe in, and I'll test it out. So who knows it, even though I'm not saying it out loud, who knows that I'm thinking that? A guy named God. He knows exactly what's going on in Eric Ludy, and he knows that he needs to continue this journey all the way to the end. Because as far as I was concerned, giving up the pipe and the picture and the tackling is far more than I'd ever seen any other young Christian be asked for. Think about it. How many Christians do you know that have gone through that? And yet he kept pressing. So here we are. It was like a Sunday, right after I think I arrived on a Saturday. The next morning was a Sunday morning, and I show up at a church. Just a random church. Someone's like, yeah, we're going to church. I'm like, okay, I guess. I didn't have a car, and so I needed to get over there. And so I was taken over to church, and I was sitting there in church, and this pastor gets up, and he shares this verse. Then fearing lest we should have fallen upon rocks, they cast 4 anchors out of the stern and wished for the day. And as the shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, when they had let down the boat into the sea under color as though they would have cast anchors out of the foreship, Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, except these abide in the ship, ye cannot be saved. And then he read this. Then the soldiers cut off the ropes of the boat and let her fall off. There was a lifeboat on this crazy ship of ours. It's a little escape hatch. It's that one thing that we can turn to if this doesn't work out. God sees it. He saw it the whole time. And it's a fetish for us. It's what's known as the spikenard in the pantry. It's the one thing that if all else fails, we always have that spikenard worth a year's wages, and we can sell it and be able to survive. And God says, if you want to survive, if you want to make this journey, you need to cut the lifeboat. The message that I heard when I first arrived at at missionary school, with all my junk, was that message. Eric, you need to cut the lifeboat. You're either all in on me, or you're not. Are you all in? Well, are you saying that I need to cut the lifeboat? I mean, can't I just sort of keep it there and not use it? Cut the lifeboat. And then the soldiers cut off the ropes of the boat and let her fall off. I'll tell you what, you want to be stripped? That's it. You thought that picture was so important in the captain's quarter. You were so attached to your pipe, but now suddenly all in perspective, that's nothing. Because this is your escape hatch. This is that one thing that you could turn to if Jesus doesn't work out the way you were hoping. You have a pile of chips in front of you and you have your poker hand. It doesn't even look like that good of a hand right now. And God says, push all the chips in. You'll win. God, how are you going to win with that? Trust me. And right now you're looking at your life. You're looking at what you have seen of God. You've seen something. I mean, you got an ace in the hand, but you also have a 2 and a 4. It doesn't look like that good of a hand. And God says, trust me. My children don't lose. All in. Key moment of my life. All the chips pushed to the center of the table. Cut the lifeboat. You're all I have now, Jesus. I have no other place to turn. If you fail me, I fail. But I'm in because I believe you won't fail me. You know, the concept of communion is exactly this. We talked about communion, but communion is basically the cutting of the lifeboat. Communion is giving my body and my blood to Jesus Christ in exchange for his own. It's saying, all I have and all I am belong to you. And it's removing any other form of dependency. I'm in. In Acts 27, it says, wherefore I pray you to take some meat, for this is for your health. And for there shall not a hair fall from the head of any of you. And when he had thus spoken, he took bread and gave thanks to God in presence of them all. And when he had broken it, he began to eat. It's like even in the midst of this story, there seems to be a communion picture. Right here. It's like a celebration, a remembrance that God has not failed us. I know it doesn't look like it right now, but cut the lifeboat. Take the bread. Celebrate the fact that your God will prove triumphant in this situation. Uh-oh. Right when you thought that that was enough. I mean, hey, we've gotten rid of the pipe in the picture. We've gotten rid of the tackling. How many other people have ever gone through that? How many of the young people your age have you ever heard asked for, had God asked for those things in their life? How many other people do you know that have ever had to deal with a lifeboat? Where do these messages come from? Who came up with them? Come on. Well, God's not done. And in the human sense, it gets worse. But in the spiritual sense, it gets better. Because we don't realize how much of an impediment we are. We don't realize that when we are left clinging to our life and we are wrapped around our existence, that our life is useless. Our life doesn't work. Now, we know our life doesn't work, but we don't realize we are the reason it doesn't work. And the only way a life can work is when we are pried away and Jesus wraps himself about us. Forsaking the cargo. Now, I told you before, as a captain, you make your money on the cargo. You get that cargo from point A to point B. If you fail in getting your cargo from point A to point B, you don't make money. In fact, usually you're renting the ship. Not every captain owns his ship. So not only does he not make any money, but now he has debt. This is not a good situation. That cargo is everything. Most captains would rather die than throw over their cargo. Okay, so when we start getting to this level, we're dealing with the fact that we say life is valuable. Because we're saying instead of committing suicide because we have to throw over our cargo, we're saying we trust God. We trust that God knows what he's doing, and he knows how valuable that cargo is to me. And he knows that if he takes that from me, he's gonna have to make it up somehow in another way, because I'm not gonna have money to pay for this ship when I arrive in dock. Forsaking the cargo. And when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship and cast out the wheat into the sea. Well, this particular ship, their cargo was wheat. And when they were done eating, they threw the cargo overboard. So my question to you would be, where are you at in this process? I know you're along in the journey because you've made it through 9 weeks of Ellerslie. 9 weeks of Ellerslie is the equivalent of the winds of the Fair Havens at a certain level. The Euroclydon blows through here often, and it's taking pipes and pictures with it often. However, do you still hold on to the tackling? Are you still holding on to a lifeboat? How's the cargo doing? So not just the non-essentials, not just the replaceables, not just the lifeboat, and not just the cargo, the entire boat. Breaking up the boat and falling into a place where two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the forepart stuck fast and remained unmovable. I love that statement. But the hinder part was broken with the violence of the waves, and the rest, some on boards and some on broken pieces of the ship. And so it came to pass that they escaped all safe to land. Your ship needs to run aground. And there's a part of you that is going to be broken to pieces. And there's another part of you that's going to adhere itself to the rock of Jesus Christ. And it's the one part of this journey that will remain, the forepart. And you will crash against the shore, the hinder part, all that is unessential in this journey for Jesus Christ is going to be removed. But you will remain unmoved. The treasure and the pearl. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto treasure hid in a field, the which when a man hath found, he hides, and for joy thereof goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls, who when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. So there's a treasure and there's a pearl. And this treasure is deemed by the one who finds it of such great worth and value that the one who found it will go and sell everything to access it. That pearl is of such great value that he will sell everything to get it. Have you ever found the pearl? Have you ever dug up the treasure? Because when you see Jesus Christ for who he truly is, all these other things that we're hanging on to and wanting to cling to and saying, I need these in my life, you say, take them all. Sell them all. Pour out the spikenard. I want the pearl. I want the treasure. Whatever I need to do to get that field where that treasure is, I will do it. That's our call, is to show esteem to the great treasure himself, Jesus Christ. He's everything. And let's give up everything to get him. Pour it out like ointment. And being in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at meat or to eat, there came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment, of spikenard, very precious. And she broke the box and poured it on his head. And there were some that had indignation within themselves and said, why was this waste of the ointment made? Okay, let's stop there. Here you are. Now, this story that we're about to share of Mary of Bethany, Jesus refers to it with such fondness that he says, whenever the gospel will be preached, this story will be included. Now, whether or not he meant that you have to actually say this exact story, he is saying this is the substance of the gospel. And when the gospel is preached, the substance of this story will be shared. What is the substance of this story? The substance of this story is a woman who sees the value of the pearl. And she looks in her pantry and says, what do I need to give up in order to access, in order to show my appreciation, in order to show my love? And she has this box of ointment, which seems strange, a box of ointment. And I don't know if it was some kind of ceramic type of thing. Some of you have probably studied it, but it's a box that can obviously be broken. And it's in her pantry. And the word for spikenard here actually has another word in the Greek known as pistikos, which is, if you studied the Greek word for faith, which is pistis or pistos, pistikos is the word which means the object of confidence, the object of one's faith. Well, for Mary of Bethany, you know what the object of her confidence was? That box of ointment in her pantry. As long as I have that box of ointment, as long as it's still there, it was a lifeboat. It was tackling. It was cargo to her. And then she beheld Jesus. And where did she go? She went to her pantry, took her precious pistikos, and she said, this is no longer my pistikos. The object of my confidence is that man seated over there eating at the table. And to prove this, I will take the precious thing in my life and I will break it out upon him. And what happened at the table? And there were some that had indignation within themselves and said, why was this waste of the ointment made? That's exactly what most of us might be thinking too. Isn't that a waste though? I mean, that could have been sold. We could have done some great things with that money, couldn't we? It's exactly the reasoning of who? Judas. That was his mind on the matter, because he was interested in taking it for himself and sticking it in his own pocket. This is a waste. And the world will say the same to you. This gospel costs us everything. And when you begin to spend your life on this gospel, those around you will cry out in indignation and say, why such a waste? That was a good life. They had such hope, such a future. And they poured it out on this? That's because they don't see the treasure. They don't see the pearl. You're the one seeing it. You can't expect them to. But you follow and you pour out your life upon Jesus Christ because he is worthy. Whatever is the object of your confidence and faith, I want you to search your pantries right now. And I want you to lay hands on it. And I want you to behold the majesty of the living God. And I want you to evaluate between this, the thing that you've always hoped in, the thing that you've always leaned on, the thing that you've always found your satisfaction in, and I want you to measure it against Jesus Christ. And if you honestly think that your box of ointment is more worthy of your faith, if you think that your box of ointment is the best insurance program you could ever take out, keep it. But if you believe Jesus Christ is who he says he is, if you see the living God in him, if you realize that he shed his blood to rescue you, then you look at this ointment and you break it upon him. And you say, you are worthy. You are more worthy. You are the one to receive everything. Because that is, to us, everything. We don't have that much. Our box of spikenard, the thing that we put our confidence in, isn't that impressive to God maybe? But it's very impressive to us. And so God's saying, you want me? You can have me. But the only way to have me is to get rid of that other thing that has you. Because I want you to have me. But that thing right now has you. Can you give it up so that I can have you the way I must? For it might have been sold for more than 300 pence and have been given to the poor. And they murmured against her. And Jesus said, let her alone. You know what I love about Mary of Bethany? Is she is always doing something. And she never opens her mouth in her own defense. Martha is saying, how come she's sitting at your feet? I'm the one bustling about doing the work. She doesn't say anything in her defense. Jesus speaks in her defense. And here, she is accused of wasting something. And Jesus speaks in her defense. Let her alone. Why trouble you her? She hath wrought a good work on me. For ye have the poor with you always, and whensoever ye will, ye may do them good. But me ye have not always. She hath done what she could. She is come aforehand to anoint my body to the burying. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her. Jesus is saying, what just happened is important. What just happened is the essence of the gospel. The gospel is a costly gospel, and Mary of Bethany understands it. And it's not because that spikenard earned her way into heaven. She already had Jesus. But to have all of Jesus, to have nothing hinder her intimacy with Jesus, to have Jesus on the terms that God desires her to have Jesus on, she needed to remove the thing that stood in the way so that she could get to Rome and bear witness of the living God before Caesar. You have a calling on your life. Nothing can hinder, stall, and abort that call other than you keeping spikenard in your pantry. If you are willing, God will get you to Rome, and the calling you've received will be 100% fulfilled, and God will get glory out of your life. But we need to allow Euroclydon to blow through. And you know what? There's a way you can avoid Euroclydon. Don't appeal to Caesar. You could be set at liberty, and I'll give you that choice. Not that I want you to take it. You could stay in the wilderness, and guess what? Instead of going into the promised land where the 31 hostile empires are, you can stay in the wilderness. No one will attack you in the wilderness. No one cares about you in the wilderness. You will be left alone. Yes, you will rot. Yes, you will be miserable. Yes, you will bake in the hot sun. Yes, you will have no intimacy with God. But you will be at liberty to rot and to burn away. Are you willing to become a slave to righteousness? To enter the land of promise? And yes, you're now in hostile territory where 31 hostile empires surround you, and you seem maybe only as big as a grasshopper. But you need to realize that your God is victorious. And your God will take down all 31 of those empires, and not one of them can stand. You are a child of the Most High God. Take that crazy spikenard out of your pantry and break it on Jesus. Get rid of it. Move on. Let Jesus have you. Let the winds of Euroclydon blow. Let the winds of the fair havens blow. Allow God to break you against the rock where the hinder part of your ship is totally smashed to pieces. You are removed. He is now seen. The part of you that must reach Rome will be secured. Let's pray. The enemy wants to stop us. We know that. The enemy will harass us. The enemy will pull out all the stops. The winds and the waves will beat against us. But Lord Jesus, you will turn these winds of the fair havens that are intending to stop us. You will turn the Euroclydon in our life that is meant to just cause us to despair as we have to lighten the ship. And you will leverage this as we face trials of many kinds. We will consider it pure joy. For you are taking all that the enemy means for evil and turning it to our good. And the enemy cannot stop us. And every attempt he makes to stop us is only a work of the Spirit of God to further the glory of Jesus Christ in and through the saints of God. The enemy has nothing. Lord Jesus, you have everything. We embrace this gospel that calls a man to die. And we embrace it with smiles upon our faces, with joy in our hearts, with peace residing upon us. We are unmoved and unshakable. We will not fear evil tidings, for we have Jesus Christ. Who wouldn't want what we have? For it is perfect and good. Amen.